Good morning and welcome to the more than 680 people who registered for this event. We are so pleased to have friends from the Massachusetts legislature joining us today, along with virtual visitors from at least half a dozen states. We have university and college presidents, faculty, staff, and students, and representatives from numerous nonprofit organizations joined us as well. Welcome to you all and buenos dias. Today we join with the Lumina Foundation to unveil a plan to achieve equity and racial justice in Massachusetts public colleges and universities. We've spent more than a year laying the groundwork for this announcement, only to now find ourselves confronting an unprecedented public health crisis. People have asked me, are you still moving forward with the equity agenda, or is that now on hold? My response is as follows. If anything, the events of the last 6 months, including the public demands for an end to systemic racism, have shown us that we need to accelerate our progress, not hunker down. I believe that the greatest challenge facing higher education today is not COVID-19, but rather the persistent inequities in access to higher education and the unequal distribution of the tools for student success. COVID-19 has simply exacerbated these inequities. So before I introduce Dr. Danette Howard of the Lumina Foundation, let me take a moment to lay out the rationale for this work to transform our system of public higher education. I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes providing a brief overview of the work the department is going to undertake. But first, I want to share how we are framing our efforts. We can all agree that everyone in the United States, irrespective of their racial or ethnic background, should have the right to access post-secondary education. We also know that students who earn a post-secondary credential will do better financially over their lifetime and have better access to careers that pay family-sustaining wages. However, we also know this is not a reality for many of our students, particularly Black and Brown students. In most ways, higher education was not intended to serve the students we serve today. The system has been designated to be exclusive and opportunities limited. What we see today in higher education is not new, and our analyses provide evidence that shows student outcomes can be predicted, unfortunately, by race and geography. As I have said before, zip code matters. Over the course of history, you have tweaked around the edges, developing and implementing policies and programs that show some progress, yet these have been insufficient to bring about the systemic change we seek. Oftentimes, when a policy is working and producing more equitable outcomes, we see efforts to scale those back and to halt the progress of advancing racial equity. Yet now, more than ever, we know that we cannot wait. We know that we have to stop tweaking around the edges and build a new system of higher education that serves all students. We need to develop and implement policies and programs that recognize the cultural wealth of our Black and Latinx students. We need to be a system of student-ready colleges and universities that put our students in the center of everything they do. We need change, and we need it now. We need to stop talking about the disparities without doing anything about them. So we've developed a plan of action, a series of items on how to advance the equity agenda within our public system of higher education, which I'll talk about next. I also want to highlight that later on during today's webinar, you'll hear directly from presidents at 6 of our fine institutions who are committed to advance our equity collective agenda. At the Board of Higher Education, as well as the Department of Higher Education, we have heeded the imperative this truth demands. Racial equity is the top policy and performance priority for the department, and we have a plan of action to dismantle barriers created by racism, and will work towards ensuring a just educational experience within which students will thrive. Our action plan demands that we look inward. We are currently creating a protocol that will allow us to conduct a department-wide policy audit. Our staff have trained well for this. The audit is required so that we can thoroughly assess and examine all of our policies and initiatives and rescind or modify modify those policies that create and exacerbate racial inequity, and to redesign our policy scheme to build a culturally sustainable public post-secondary system where students can thrive. We'll be conducting this audit over 3 years, with the first year focused on those policies that have the most impact on students. The equity agenda requires a framing that fully centers on students. We will be engaged in work with campus and external colleagues to reimagine every aspect of the undergraduate experience to one that fully recognizes students' cultural wealth, transforms teaching, learning, and all aspects of student life within an anti-racist vision. In this process, we'll be updating a framework that has not changed since 1989. Ultimately, this work is shifting from a focus on the question of whether students are college ready to ensuring that colleges and universities are student ready. We know that clarity in language, goals, and measures is vital to racially equitable practices, and our performance measurement reporting system has been designed from that perspective. We will use data strategically to ensure we measure progress toward our racial equity goals. Centering the lived experiences of our students also means that our analysis will value students' experiences through qualitative data. Working from this framework will lead to a culture where we are identifying and implementing equity-minded, evidence-based solutions. None of us can do this in isolation. We know that it must be an integrated, collective community practice. At a state level, that means creating the support systems that will allow all of us, students, faculty, and staff alike, to connect across all aspects of our work. We have already created a Campus Equity Advisory Board, which has and will allow us to bring together voices across public higher education in Massachusetts. And the presidents you'll hear from later represent leadership, administration, faculty, and staff who have committed to true racial justice practice on their campuses and a commitment to learning from each other and sharing with colleagues across the Commonwealth and nationally. We'll also create practice tools to do this work, developing a centralized digital resource for campus colleagues to exchange toolkits to implement evidence-based practices. We will also work to develop a statewide professional development curriculum focused on culturally sustaining teaching practices. To quote Lin-Manuel Miranda, "This is not a moment, it's a movement." We know we are confronting and attempting to dismantle at least 400 years of history. As we know, this work must be focused on sustainable transformation. Continuing on this theme, we know we can't do this alone or in isolation. We will ensure long-term sustainability by convening and supporting a broad, deep coalition of equity partners across our many communities. And we will be developing a 10-year statewide strategic plan for higher education in Massachusetts, focused on achieving racial justice and equity.